Hello, grammarians! Today I want to start talking about irregular verbs. That is to say, verbs that are a little weird. You know, we have this idea of a regular verb that we can conjugate in all tenses, and it's just going to behave in a way that we expect. Like, for example, the verb talk. Right? So if we take a regular verb and we put it in the past, the present, and the future, this is what it's going to look like. Present tense, talk. Future tense, will talk. Past tense, talked, with that ed ending. But there are plenty of verbs in English, as you have no doubt discovered, that don't follow that basic rule. Present tense, this one form of the verb, and the past tense is the present with ed tacked onto it, and then the future with will tacked onto the front. And there are plenty of words in English, as you have no doubt discovered, that don't behave that way at all. So let's take an irregular word, like run. Present tense, run. Future tense, will run. Past tense, ran. Oh, weird. Super duper weird. Now, there are a lot of irregular verbs in English, but you're listening to someone with a grammar book the size of a car. So I think between the two of us, we can figure this out together. But for now, let's just focus on 4 verbs: to be, to have, to do, and to say. So let's take these verbs and make them work for a bunch of different people in different times. So in the first person, when we're talking about ourselves, when I'm talking about myself, in the present I would say I am. I have, I do, I say. If we're talking about someone else in the present, in the singular, we would say she is, she has, she does, and she says. So the third person singular is different in the way that these words are pronounced. So am, because of this entirely different word, is. Have doesn't become haves, it's has. And do doesn't become does, it becomes does. We actually change the vowel sound here. Just like say doesn't become says. We don't say she says in standard American English. We say she says. In the present tense, we are, we have, we do, we say. And in the past tense, in the first person, these 4 verbs form the following: I was, I had, I did, and I said. And in the plural past, it was we were, we had, we did, and we said. These 4 verbs are some of the strangest ones in English, but they're the most important. In another video, I'm going to go through some broad rules that govern the rest of the irregular verbs in English. You can learn anything. David out. Hello, grammarians. We're talking about irregular verbs, that is to say that verbs that aren't formed like regular verbs. And to give you a taste of what regular verbs look like just as a refresher, let's take the word walk. Let's put it in the present tense. And now, normally, under normal circumstances, we'd want to just add an ed to it in order to form the simple past tense. So we go from walk to walked. We add this ed ending. And it turns out that there are a lot of irregular verbs that also behave the same way. When we make the past tense, we have this d sound. It's just that they're not represented that way in the spelling. I'll give you an example. The present tense form of the word to sleep is sleep. And when we put it in past tense, it is not sleeped, but slept. The pt part of slept does the same work as the ed ending for the regular plural. So sleep becomes slept is the same as walk becomes walked. Likewise, keep becomes kept, build becomes built, spend becomes spent, leave becomes left, leap becomes leapt, and lose becomes lost. So although these verbs are all irregular verbs, within their irregularity, at least in this case, there is some common distinctions. They're all still trying to make the same sound as walked. It just displays differently. So it's not sleeped, but slept, not keeped, but kept, not builded, but built, not spended, but spent, not leaved, but left, not leaped, but leapt, not losed, but lost. At least as it applies to modern standard English. And that, my friends, is the funky ED. You can learn anything. David out. Hello, grammarians. We're talking about vowel shifting in irregular verbs, which is going to sound a little weird, but bear with me. To review what a vowel is super quick. A vowel is any sound that your mouth can make while your tongue isn't touching your lips or your teeth or the roof of your mouth, basically. And in English, we render vowels in the following way. A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Or as it is commonly pronounced, ow. That part's not true. But here is what's true, is that you produce vowels from different parts of your mouth. You can produce a vowel in the front of your mouth, you can produce it in the center of your mouth, and you can produce it all the way back in your throat. And what does this have to do with irregular verbs? I'm so glad you asked. Let's draw a chart. So I'm going to put 3 things on this chart. The present, the past, and the past perfect, which is when you're talking about something in the past that is completed. And we form that in English by combining that verb with have. So, have walked, have said, have done. Now, in most cases, with most regular verbs, the past perfect and the past form are the same thing. But in some very rare cases, and that's why we're talking about these, they're different. And let's begin with the first one. In the present tense, we say, I sing. In the past tense, we would say, she sang. And in the past perfect, you would say, they have sung. So it's weird, right? Because the vowel changes. This vowel sound, actually bounces along your mouth. It goes from front to middle to back as you go further and further back in time. Which I think is really cool. Same thing with the word drink. In the present tense, it's I drink. In the past tense, it's I drank. And in the past perfect, it's I had drunk. There are other verbs that follow this formula too, like ring, rang, rung for ringing a bell. But for the rest of this, we're just going to talk about verbs where the past and the past perfect are the same. And there's still a vowel shift going on between the present and the past. So if you take a word like win, the present tense is win, the past tense is won, and the past perfect is also won. We had won the game, we won the game. So that vowel shift goes from I to the verb to find. So in the present tense, it's find, and in the past and past perfect, it's found. It goes from I to ow. Sit becomes sat. Sneak becomes snuck. And run becomes ran. And run is a weird one because the past perfect form of run is run. He had run, not he had ran. And those are some of the front to back sound shifts, it, at, or it, or I to ow, that you will encounter when you're learning irregular verbs in English. You can learn anything. David out. Hello, grammarians. Broadly, we're talking about irregular verbs, but more specifically today, we're going to talk about the en ending, which is why I'm calling this lecture Taken for a Ride, because this little en thing. So we've spoken previously about verbs that show their past tense or their past perfect or past participle forms by changing their vowel sound, like the verb to sing, right? Present tense sing, past tense sang, past perfect aspect had sung. So some of the words we're going to be talking about today also have that vowel change. But what's different about them is that for the past perfect or past participle form, instead of ed, it's en. Let me explain. The verb to tear, right? In its present tense, it's tear. I tear this piece of paper. Past tense, I tore this piece of paper. And in the past perfect, it's I had torn. I probably shouldn't have done that. I had notes on that paper. Some verbs that fall into the category of the en past perfect have regular seeming past tenses. So for example, the word show. I show him the book. She showed me the book. We had shown them the book. So we're still getting this n sound. Same thing goes with prove. Present tense, proved. Past tense, proved Past perfect, proven. Same deal for the verb to bite. I bite, it bit, I was bitten, or it had bitten. The present tense of to ride is ride, the past is rode, and the past perfect or past participle is had ridden or was ridden, as in the horse was ridden all around the countryside. The verb to eat works this way. Present tense eat, past tense ate, past participle or past perfect is had eaten or was eaten. So I had eaten earlier, or the cookie was eaten by Stu. The verb speak undergoes that vowel shift, so it goes speak in the present tense, spoke in the past tense, and past participle or past perfect is spoken. Even really weird words like to be and to go obey this rule, the en rule. It just doesn't necessarily look like it. So, to be, the past of that is either was or were. But the past perfect form of that is been, which is just be with an in ending on it. Right. Go is the same way. So even though go has a really weird past form, I go, she went, the past perfect or past participle form is gone. And sure, the letters aren't in the right order, but the sound is there, gone. Irregular verbs are weird. There's no denying it. But we can break them down, and they can be understood. And you can learn anything. David out. Hello, grammarians. Welcome to the last and strangest part of the irregular verb, the truly irregular. Yes, friends, here I have compiled all the weirdest, all the woolliest, all the eeriest and spookiest forms of verbs that don't otherwise fall into other categories. So we can't say that they end with a changed ed, we can't say that they end with an en, and we can't say that there's a vowel shift. We've already covered those. This is the time for the weird stuff. First up, UGHT. Oh, what a strange collection of letters that is to be found in English. So we take a word like teach, and in the past tense, it's taught. Likewise, catch becomes caught, and bring becomes brought. Yes, that's really strange. There are only a couple of words that behave that way. It's also pretty weird and pretty rare for there to be a vowel shift from the present to the past, and also a d sound. So, for example, we take the word flee, which means to run away, and in the past it's fled. Likewise, in the present we say, and in the past we say said. So that a becomes and that e becomes and it's this weird vowel shift that's also followed up by a d sound. There are some words for whom time does not exist. These are verbs for whom the present tense is the same as the past tense. Prepare to have your mind blown. The past tense of bet is bet. The past tense of set is set. The past tense of hurt is hurt. Yeah, it's weird. Finally, there are some helper verbs or auxiliary verbs called modals that are super weird and have these properties that aren't repeated anywhere else in English. So, present tense can becomes past tense could. I can stand on my head, or I could stand on my head when I was 5. May becomes might in the past. Shall becomes should. And will becomes would. And what's super weird about these L's in could, should, or would is listen to me saying them. You don't pronounce the L's. And this is the only place in English where that silent L shows up. It's so strange. I love it. These are the irregular verbs. And these, in fact, are the most irregular of the irregular. If you can master these, you will be a grammar champion. And I believe in you, because you can learn anything. David out.